Okay, so welcome. Jared Johnson here for the Monday webinar. Um, it's a great day here in California, along by the beach. Loving it very much. For everybody that's visiting us for the first time, this is just a little tiny bit of what we do. It's my Monday webinar. I talk about some stuff I'm looking for this Monday or this week, starting right now. Now, why not do this another day? Why not do it at the end of the week or on a Sunday night? Because most of the time we don't do a ton of trading Sunday night into Monday morning. However, there are some great opportunities there for sure. So that may be a premium feature I add on for paying group members, just so you guys know. I've been watching the markets a bit Sunday night into Monday morning. Obviously, there was nothing to start this week off, but the bulk of my trading happens basically Monday night to Thursday night. So that's why I do these on Monday nights. Okay, anyway. So if you have any questions about anything whatsoever, you'd like to get a free trial to our live trade group, any of those things, you can find all the information right here. You can visit us at daytradersfx.com. You can find me on Twitter. I send out a lot of ridiculous things on Twitter on a semi-regular basis. Come on by and have a look. Hey, Carolyn, nice to see you. Again, the website's right there, or you can just send me a good old-fashioned email, jared@daytradersfx.com. I'd love to hear from you and hear any questions you might have about anything. Again, my goal is to find some things or to talk about some things that I will be trading this week if they play out the way that I'm kind of looking for at the beginning of the week. Most of the time, most of the things I'm looking at the beginning of the week play out fairly nicely to that fashion. Sometimes they don't, and so that's why we have a live trade group, because we, kind of change things as the week goes. Sometimes, depending on market conditions, right? What happens, and how things develop, and so on. But very often, what we look for at the beginning of the week tends to play out very well and very consistently throughout the week. So we want to talk about important news events, anything that's happening good this week, overall trends of currencies, and maybe a little look at the stock market and how commodities are doing. Remember that trading is risky, so always trade at your own risk. Make sure that you understand that you could, not only lose your $500 trading account, but you could also lose your house and your best friend and your dog. So trading can be risky. Just make sure you understand that, because it's kind of crazy sometimes. This is just a reminder that sometimes crazy people are the ones doing the craziness. So there we are. But that is that. There is some Darth Vader in there, Simon. Absolutely. Okay, so here's a little bit of what we are looking at as far as news goes this week. We've got some exciting news announcements. Tuesday, bright and early, this is where, hi Caroline, this is where some craziness can happen sometimes. Bank of England, Carney is speaking Tuesday morning at 3 a.m. I'll be here. I'm not going to say we're going to necessarily have a live session, but I'll be here and I'll be sending out messages on the mobile trade alerts for this. But Carney's going to be speaking, and that's always potentially exciting. That's at 3 a.m. It's basically in about 11 hours from now. And then Wednesday we've got we have some interest rate news coming out of Canada. That's important. That's definitely going to be a bit of a mover on some of the Canadian dollar pairs, and we're looking at some Canadian dollar pairs because they've been moving pretty well lately, and I think that's going to be absolutely worth looking at. Thursday we have retail sales for the UK. That's a favorite. I totally like that one. And then we have interest rate news for Europe. That's a big guy. Retail sales for Canada, that's something worth watching. And then we have, of course, the press conference for Europe, which is either huge or it's nothing. It just kind of depends on the month. And I have no idea which one it's going to be this time. But it's usually worth keeping an eye on. So that's going to be a pretty big deal. So as you can see, we have pretty important news announcements almost every day. And then going into Friday, some CPI numbers for Canada, some European news, and then we get a bunch of daylight savings folks happening here. Switzerland, most of Europe, and it looks like the UK is going in there. So yeah, I hear you. I'm at least 50% responsible for U.S. retail sales. So I'm happy to contribute and happy to know someone's helping on the other side as well. So we've got some exciting news this week. Should be fun. And oops, here we go. Okay, so here's a little bit of what we're looking at. I'm not too interested in dollar pairs this week. In fact, I'm almost zero interested in anything with the US dollar this week, except for a couple pairs. We're going to talk about what those are. But as you can see, this is a daily chart. We're looking at a couple of months worth of movement on the dollar index, but it's pretty sideways. It's pretty flat. Look at our big support down here around 9,300, and we've got some resistance up along these tops here and so on. The dollar index is totally sideways. Now, when we look at it on a little bit of a bigger picture, like maybe a weekly chart, you can see that we've got a pretty nice bull flag in the works right here, which should hopefully continue to push it up. Now, we've got a 38% fib all the way down here at that 9,200 area, so it could be looking to dip down and tap that before continuing up. I don't know. We'll see. We're going to be watching it. But the dollar index has been very sideways and overall pretty flat since about May, right around May of this year. It kind of bottomed out, and then it's just been sideways for the last 4 or 5 months. Hasn't really done too much. So dollar index is a little bit on the uneventful side, which is one of the reasons I'm not looking for a lot of dollar pairs to trade. I'm a little bit more interested in some of the others. Now, let me just start off by saying my typical, okay, here's what we're looking for, so on and so on. I'm still interested in the euro dollar around 11300. I'm interested in buying some euro dollar down around that general area. But it's just so choppy and so messy that it's not even going to really make my radar. But I'm going to watch 11300. You can see we're not far away from it. We're at 11327, so this part's at least worth taking note of. 11300 is going to be interesting. If it holds, if it looks solid, if it does well, it's already hit 11300. I'll be potentially ready to jump into a buy trade. Potentially, I'll be ready for a buy trade at that 11300. But overall, euro dollar, pretty boring. Pound dollar made a nice little move, and then it's been totally sideways in a fairly small channel of less than 100 pips for about 4 or 5 days here. Just kind of some regular dullness. The pound is in a very nice sideways channel once again of the last several months. If we look at this in a little bit more of an extended look, it's just in the middle of total unadulterated crap. So I don't know what we can do with the pound dollar other than occasionally get a nice little breakout if there is some good news or some bad news or whatever it might be. We could have a nice little bull flag right here that I'm happy to trade the break of, but it's going to take some news for it to get there. So, looking for a break of 15500. If that happens, I'll be looking to get into that. So I'll buy a little dip on euro dollar, probably. I'll probably buy the break on pound dollar, probably. So those are kind of two of the dollar pairs that I have some very slight interest in. I'm waiting for the dollar CAD. I like the dollar CAD quite a bit, but I'm waiting for dollar CAD to kind of get past some of the big news that it's got coming up. So I'm not going to do anything on dollar CAD until we get some interest rate news and so on out. Going to some other dollar pairs really quick. I love New Zealand dollar. So I wasn't even going to talk about the euro dollar, pound dollar, but I figured I'd throw those in. But I really like New Zealand dollar. I think this one is a great little setup, great little pair to be looking at. We've got a nicely overbought 1 hour chart. And so if this New Zealand dollar decides to dip down just a little bit, 50, 60, 70 pips, I'm going to be pretty excited about buying into this. I think New Zealand dollar is going to be a great buying opportunity if we can get some dips down into this lower kind of trend channel. We're looking at a couple of weeks worth of movement here. If we can get this down around 6750 to 6700, I would be pretty interested in looking for some opportunities to pick up some buys at those dips. But I'm kind of looking at that 6750-ish zone. Keep in mind our 200 moving average is around 6725, but right in that general area, I'm going to be looking to buy some New Zealand dollar. Now, I still think there's probably a decent opportunity for it to continue dropping a bit more. So there's probably 50 pips of downward movement on New Zealand dollar to be had before I'm going to start getting interested in buying this and buying that move higher. Because my 1 hour chart's still telling me that this is a little bit overbought and we need to be looking for some opportunities to trade this down just a bit. But I personally am not looking for it to go down too much before I start buying it and trading it back up. So that's what I'm looking for on New Zealand dollar. Australian dollar is kind of an interesting one as well. The Australian dollar has kind of been running all over the place, and then it had a good strong push, but it's gotten heavy again. The Australian dollar's gotten heavy, which is why we see the Aussie New Zealand pair just heading, for the hills. It's consolidated a little bit here, but it's been dropping pretty heavily for the last couple of weeks because we're seeing New Zealand holding very strong, and Australia is kind of a little soft. But I'm watching the Australian dollar, and I'm still looking at 7,200. If 7,200 holds, I will probably be a buyer on the Australian dollar. So you can see I'm still looking for some dollar weakness, U.S. dollar weakness at this point. I want to buy some dips on euro dollar. I want to buy some breakouts on pound dollar, possibly buy some dips on Aussie dollar, and pretty much definitely buy some dips on New Zealand dollar. So that's kind of what I'm looking for at the moment, but I think all of those pairs probably are going to dip down a little bit before continuing higher. So that's what I'm looking for on those guys. Some of the pairs that I think are going to be pretty exciting and kind of fun to trade are going to be some of these other ones that I don't talk about a whole bunch. Euro New Zealand is looking interesting as the Euro New Zealand approaches this heavily overbought 200 moving average. I'm going to be watching this thing around 16500. 16500 is this nice little level right here where we've got a lot of consolidation and congestion back in July and even June. It's our 200 moving average. There's some missed pivot activity there. I like that 16500 area, so I'm keeping my eye on that for opportunities to buy that dip on Euro New Zealand. I think that's going to be a good little move there. I'm watching the Pound New Zealand as well. The Pound New Zealand, again, we've got some big news coming. Pound New Zealand is pretty overextended on the 1 hour chart, so I'm looking for this to kind of continue and work its way back up. We've got another 125 pips before we reach the 200 moving average, which is totally excellent. So we're going to be looking for opportunities to buy the break of this if it starts to head higher. However, I'm liking this little low right here as well. We've got some congestion and some consolidation through here, so if this breaks out of our little tiny semi-crazy looking rising wedge, then I would look to sell this. I would trade this down below about the 2.2725 area. Otherwise, I like this little area right up here. You can see we have some pretty excellent resistance about 2.2785. So these little levels are not super far apart. They're about 60 pips apart or so. And a little breakout either way gives us great reason to believe that this could be headed up 100 pips into the 200 moving average, or that it could be headed down a good little chunk into some of these pivots and so on and through this trend line. So I'm liking this Pound New Zealand. I think this is a good little mover. Again, it's run back after a long time away and hit the 200 moving average, but I still think we're probably going to see a little bit more New Zealand dollar strength than pound strength, depending on some of the news that happens this week and so on. So if this does run up and hit that 200 moving average, then I'm even more excited about shorting it. But if it just breaks some of this resistance, or excuse me, some of this support and trend line and so on, then I'll just short that as well. And it could be coming back down to test this trend line and so on. So anyway, just kind of an easy little short, quick level right there on Pound New Zealand. So I'm still overall looking, and I think we're going to see some New Zealand strength this week after some very slight pullbacks. Speaking of more New Zealand pairs, I'm looking at the New Zealand yen, which is a bit overextended. You can see the 1 hour chart here has got some decent numbers. We're about 273 candlesticks since the last touch and so on. So I'm looking to see if this New Zealand yen is going to give us a little dip down, maybe into the 80-50 area, missed pivot, 200 moving average kind of zone. See if we can grab about 100 pips out of that movement down. And then from there, we'll kind of see where it goes. But we've got a nice little channel that the New Zealand yen's been sitting in, and I want to kind of see how this is going to play out. See if we're going to continue to see New Zealand strength against a yen pair, or against the yen itself. So I'm kind of watching that, but I'm definitely watching this 80-75, 80-50 area for some activity. Now remember, we've also got some pretty interesting, we've got some big news for the euro and for the UK. So some of the pound pairs and euro pairs are going to be kind of like watch and see for a couple of days. But I do like what I see on some of these guys. The euro Aussie is in this kind of crazy little channel situation it's been running up on. The Euro New Zealand Euro Aussie just ran straight up from the lows of this year. It ran straight up, had some big wild spikes. You know, this big movement up right here, where it ran up just a ridiculous amount and has pulled back down fairly nicely. And it's kind of consolidating its way through here, and it's kind of just sitting right at this pretty interesting trend line that goes all the way back to May of this year. It's tested, and it's sitting right there. If we get a break out of this trend line, we might see some pretty significant movement on the Aussie against the Euro and get some big movement down towards some of these bigger targets. So I'm going to be watching for a trend line break on this one, but so far it's holding, and I'm not going to, I won't fight that trend too much. I'll be looking for opportunities to buy some breakouts up on Euro Aussie. But definitely looking for this big long-term trend line to potentially break and give us some bigger movements down of a couple hundred pips. So Euro Aussie looks pretty cool. I think there's some good activity there. Let's see, and I lost one of the pairs I wanted to talk about. There it is. The Pound Aussie is also in this interesting channel. So again, I'm looking for. I think the Aussie is going to be a bit of a mixed bag this week, but I think we've got some pretty good strength on the Australian dollar. For the most part, it's softened up a little bit, but against some of these other counterparts, it's it seems to be losing a little, gaining a little, and so on. We've definitely had some gaining on the Australian dollar versus the pound over the last couple of months, but it's been losing as it's kind of bounced off this trend line and off the bottom of this channel here. But I'm looking for it to move up just a little bit more, see if we can get it up about another 150 or 200 pips. We should have some opportunities to buy some breaks and trade this up into the 2.1500-ish area, 1600 even, 250 or so points of movement up. And then we'll be looking for opportunities to short this back down. We have a pretty extended daily chart that looks pretty ripe to kind of bounce off of some resistance here and continue back down into some of this big time support. So I'm going to be watching the Pound Aussie this week as well. I think this is a good one. So I'm going to be watching Euro dollar and Pound dollar fairly casually. I'm going to be watching New Zealand dollar very closely, Australian dollar very closely, Euro New Zealand, Pound New Zealand pretty closely, and Euro Aussie and Pound Aussie pretty closely. And then I'm going to just keep my eye on all New Zealand pairs and kind of see how those go. But overall, I think at this point, unless something majorly changes on the other side, I'm kind of looking for more U.S. dollar weakness. Maybe after a little tiny bit more pullback tonight, I'm going to be shorting U.S. dollar, and most likely I'm going to be trying to stay somewhat long New Zealand and possibly long Australian dollar this week. And depending on how things go, I may continue to stay short Euro, short Pound against some of those other pairs outside of the U.S. dollar. So as you can see, it's going to be an interesting week. There's a lot of kind of mixed details out there. So this is definitely one of my less definitive starts of the week. I watched the market all night long last night, and I thought, phew, what do I think is going to happen here? I don't even know. So I'm kind of going with the flow, so to speak. I'm trying to stick with some trends, and I'm trying to stick with the pairs that have been strong, but the picture can change rapidly this week, and so that'll be very important to keep an eye on the trade alerts and kind of some of the analysis we have coming out, because definitely as the week goes and as some of these big important news announcements come out, we're going to get a much clearer picture of where everything's headed. So I think it's going to be a great week, and I think everything is going to develop quite a bit more as we go over the next 12 or 24 hours. So I'm looking forward to that. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Questions, comments, shoot them right over right now. Let's get this video posted, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I'd love to hear any pairs that I didn't cover or I didn't look at. So send them over. Let's hear it.